3 about how my cat got me grounded, and yes, I am talking about my pet cat. So like I said, I had a foolproof plan to escape, okay? I was going to get out the window and I was going to just crawl back in and act like nothing ever happened. But there was an issue with this, okay? My dad was supposed to fix my window because I somehow broke it. I don't even know how. But anytime that I go to put my window up, it just literally falls. And not only does it fall, it locks when it falls. And obviously you can guess what will happen if it does fall. I won't be able to get back in the house and I will somehow have to get in the house without my parents knowing, which is literally impossible. So I will be grounded for the rest of my life. So I was going to put a book between the window and the windowsill, but I didn't want it falling and making a lot of noise. So I decided to put a pillow there. So I snuck out of my house at 11 o'clock and I had the best time of my life. Probably because that's the first and only time that I will ever be invited to any party. But fast forward, I go and I run to the side of the house to get into my window. And of course the pillow is missing. And I'm looking around to see where the pillow went in my room. And of course my cat is laying on it on the floor. So I tried messing with the window and then all of a sudden my parents walked in my room and saw me. Part 2 about why I hate Valentine's Day. So like I said, I Uber to his apartment and I knock on the door and I hear some woman from inside say, "Don't worry, babe, I'll get it." So I hurry up and try to tie my coat because I had untied it thinking that my boyfriend was going to open the door. But no, why would my boyfriend open his own door to his own apartment that he lives alone in? So she opens the door and she's like, "Hi, what can I help you with?" And I'm like, "Oh, is this apartment blah, blah, blah?" And she's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh, well, is Jimmy here?" And she was like, "Yeah." So she calls Jimmy over to the door. I look directly at him and I'm like, "Oh, is this like your friend or something?" And she's like, "Excuse me, I'm his fiance." So I'm looking at him all confused and I start screaming that he's a liar, a cheater. He's like, "Babe, go call the police. I have no idea who this woman is. She sounds crazy." So his fiance walks away and he goes, "I'm sorry, I'll call you later." And then security escorts me off the property. Needless to say, I never talk to him ever again. Part 4 about how my best friend made my entire school hate me. So like I said, Layla and Ivy talked my boyfriend into breaking up with me the week that I was suspended. They showed him fake text messages between me and some guy that doesn't even exist. And then they also faked a conversation between Layla and I, and it's me saying, "OMG, this guy's so hot, I'm gonna leave my boyfriend for him." Then I was getting called a cheater, and when I went back to school the next week on Monday, it was terrible. People would whisper and laugh at me when I was walking in the hallway. I would be in the bathroom and there would be girls talking about how weird and disgusting I was loud enough so I could hear them. Every lunch table that I sat at, Layla and Ivy would sit at the other end with all their friends and just talk about me the entire time. Well, after this situation, I finally decided that I was going to do online school for the next 2 months and then hopefully have a fresh start in high school. All the girls and I were changing in the locker room and we went to gym class. Ivy asked if she could go to the bathroom, which of course was in the locker room. After gym class, I get changed in my clothes. All the girls start laughing at me when my teacher says, "There's a hole in the back of your pants." And yes, I did try telling my teachers about this stuff that was going on, because we all should know by now schools are notorious for not doing shit to help students that are being bullied. Storytime about why I will never go on a date ever again. So a little background information. I was 20 years old and I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship. Now, I had just gotten out of this relationship like a month before I went on this date. And I had absolutely no intentions of looking for a guy, but I was up for, flirting with them and going on some dates. Well, the one day I am at the gym in my apartment building. And there's this guy who's walking on the treadmill next to me, and I get off and he gets off at the same time and he starts up a conversation with me, and we had started talking about how I never went jet skiing. And he was like, "Oh, well, do you want to go jet skiing on Tuesday?" So I just decided to put myself out there. I said yes, and bam, we had a date the next day. So I meet him at his car and we go on this date. He did end up paying, which was very nice. But anyways, we're on the jet ski and we're in the middle of the water. I was kind of weirded out because I didn't think that we would have to be that close with each other. Like for part 2. Part 2 about why I will never go on a date ever again. So like I said, he takes us to the beach, we get on the jet ski, and it's just 2 of us on one jet ski, which I was low-key uncomfortable about because I thought that we were each going to get our own, so there would be no touching involved. And after the shit that he pulled, I definitely wish that I had my own jet ski. So apparently he's jet skied all of his life, he knew how to do this. Well, we go pretty far out from land because he knew the people and he didn't have to listen to any of the rules. He offered to let me drive it, but I did not want to because of the fact that he was going super fast and I did not want to do that shit. Well, listen to this. He flips us off the jet ski, right? And when he does that, all of a sudden it hits me. I am in the middle of the ocean. Like, there's sharks, there's other things, there's creepy things, mysterious things we don't even know about. I literally start crying, and he thinks it's funny. He gets on the jet ski and literally drives away. I'm not even joking, he left me there for 3 minutes. I could barely see land. And then he ended up coming back, and he was like, "Ha ha ha, da da da." I never saw him. Story time about why I hate Valentine's Day. So a little background information, I was 22 years old and I had been dating this guy for almost a year. And we're gonna call him Jimmy. Most of Jimmy and I's relationship had been long distance because literally after 2 months of us dating, he was offered a job in a different state. And I never worried about him cheating on me or anything like that because he seemed like a really honest and genuine guy. But of course I was wrong because he said that he couldn't do anything for Valentine's Day because he had to work. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, well, I'm just gonna fly to him, so we can spend Valentine's Day together. And it'll be a nice surprise. So a few days before Valentine's Day, I get my plane ticket and I wanted to do something special. So I wore some nice lingerie under a trench coat. Well, fast forward, my plane lands and I get an Uber to his apartment. And when I knock on his door, I hear a woman's voice from inside saying, "Don't worry, I'll get the door." Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend made my whole school hate me. So like I said, we were all friends in the group, but I was Layla's best friend. So her and I would pretty much boss everybody else around. But one day Layla tells one of our friends, Nova, to go and listen to what Ivy and her friends were talking about during lunch. Because Nova had friends who sat at the same lunch tables as them. Well, I guess Ivy was talking about how she was going to try to talk to every guy that Layla talked to just to make her mad. And that started a whole war. Layla and I have a sleepover that same night and she's like, we should make an Instagram account and expose her. Now, Ivy was notorious for sending out explicit pictures to guys. Like, even if she didn't know them, she loved the attention from guys. So Layla told me that we were going to make a fake Snapchat account and try to get her to send pictures. I'm not going to lie, it was kind of sad. She literally sent them within 5 minutes of Layla texting her pretending to be some guy. After that, we both made Instagram accounts that were named Exposing Ivy or something along those lines. And we made 2 accounts just so that way, if one got taken down, hopefully the other one would stay up. We posted the pictures on there and a lot of people saw them, like for part 3. Part 3 about why my sister is probably worse than yours. So like I said, she asked me if I want help getting ready. I say yes. And my family's super Italian, so we have thick, dark hair that grows in everywhere. Like I literally have a unibrow and the peach fuzz that's above my lips looks like a mustache. So my sister's like, hey, do you want me to wax your face? And I say yes. And she definitely wasn't over the situation and she wanted me to be in pain because I begged her to use this IPL device on me called U-Like, which was basically at-home laser hair removal but safer and it did not hurt at all. So my sister hasn't had to deal with hair in literally months. So I begged her to use U-Like on me and she's like, no, either you can let me wax you or you're going on this date with a mustache. So of course I gave in to her waxing my face. We go grab my mom's wax, which has probably been sitting in her cupboard for literally 6 years. My sister puts it in the microwave and then I lay down on the kitchen table and she goes to put the wax on me. I already knew this was going to be painful. As soon as the wax touched my skin, I literally started screaming and she was like, stop being a baby, and she put more on me. I knocked the container over, it gets all over me. When I get to the hospital, I figure out that I have 3rd-degree burns and my sister did it on purpose. Part 2 about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, I parked all the way in the back of the parking lot. I mean, okay, not all the way in the back, but I was damn near close. So I go in and I'm not too familiar with this Target. I've only been here a few times because the mini market in my hometown is usually the one that I go to. So I'm looking around and I realize that there's this little girl following me. But it seemed like she was more like keeping an eye on me. Like she would stand like 20 feet behind me, but just like stare at me, peek through the aisles. And she did that for like 10 minutes. But whenever I finally went up to the checkout, she was gone. And this woman came up to me. She was like, oh my gosh, have you seen my daughter? She was running around the store. I don't know where she is. So I described the little girl to her that I saw. And she was like, yeah, that's her. I can't find her. Will you please help me look for her? And I didn't have the time for this because my parents were going to wring my neck. But I said, okay. Part 2 about how my cat got me grounded, and yes, I am talking about my pet cat. So like I said, my best friends are begging me to come out of the house. They're like, listen, do whatever you have to come to this party. This is the first and probably only party that we will ever be invited to in our entire lives. So at this point, I start planning to sneak out of my house. So my parents usually go to sleep at around 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and they usually wake up at 5:30 in the morning. But since this party was on a Friday, obviously my parents aren't going to wake up at that time. They'll usually wake up around maybe 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. So this gave me a perfect amount of time to do what I needed to do, come back and not get caught. But just in case, I made sure to turn off any alarms on their phone. But I also had to make sure that I had a foolproof plan to get out of the house and get back in. Now, of course, I couldn't go through any of the doors in the house because of the stupid Ring doorbell. But there was one thing that did work in my favor. So my dad had been slowly but surely installing the window security alarms, but he hadn't made it to my room yet, so I was good to sneak out of my window. And thankfully, my window was on the 1st floor. Like for part 3. Part 2 about this boy who stabbed me with a pencil in kindergarten. So like I said, everybody would pretty much bully him, and I was one of the kids that just sat back and laughed, didn't say anything to him directly. Eventually, we were getting in trouble for discluding him. We would all have to stay inside during recess with our heads down on the desk in the dark. So then everybody act like they were going to include him. Like the one time they were like, okay, we're playing hide and seek, you go hide. And then they never went to find him. So then this kid actually started getting violent. My guess is because the teachers and principal were not doing anything about it. When everybody was walking, he would purposely trip kids. This one time, this girl brought in pencils for the whole class, and she didn't give him one. So he said that he felt sick the one day, and all the kids went out to recess, and he went around and broke every single pencil. And I came in and I found it, so I told the teacher. And then during nap time, he put his mat by me, and when I finally fall asleep, he literally comes over and stabs me in the back of the neck with a pencil. Story time about how my cat got me grounded. And yes, I mean my literal pet cat got me grounded. So a little background information, I was 16 and I was a freshman in high school, and my parents were extremely strict. Now, of course, there was the usual no hanging out with boys, no hanging out with anybody on the weekdays. Well, my parents took it a step further. Actually, no, they took it like 10 miles further. I got my phone taken every night at 6 o'clock. Even on the weekends, and my friends were only allowed to come over for 8 hours exactly on the weekends. And they had to have a ride to and from my house. Well, usually my friend group and I were never invited to any kind of parties, but this one girl who had just moved to our school, she was throwing a huge party and she invited everybody, not just the popular kids. So obviously my friends begged me to go. They were like, please, we can sneak over there. Your parents go to bed early anyways. For part 2. Part 3 about how this girl and her boyfriend literally beat me up. So like I said, I told his girlfriend everything about how he didn't want her. I sent her the receipts and everything. And then she has the audacity to tell me I'm disgusting, I'm this, I'm that, saying that I'm gross for even doing anything with him. I should have known that he had a girlfriend. I should have told him off. Like, sis, your man did not mention you once. He didn't even mention you as an ex-girlfriend, so put the blame on him, not me. So later that day, he invites me over, and I am shook because I at least thought that he was going to bring it up and be like, why did you text my girlfriend? So I thought that maybe she was one of those girls where she's like, OMG, my man is never wrong. I'm not even going to confront him because I don't want him to break up with me, and it just wasn't his fault. So fast forward, I get to his house. I usually just walk in because I've been over there so many times. Well, as soon as I walk in the door, him and his girlfriend start wailing on me. I ended up with a few broken ribs, but I also ended up pregnant with his child. His family thinks that he should be with me since I'm having his kid. She decided to stay with him, so she comes to every prenatal appointment. Storytime about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So a little background information, I was 16 and it was during the summertime, and I was super excited because I had just got my license, but my parents had this idea that if they made me drive around and do all their errands, that I would be a better driver. So I was pretty much like their BITCH. Anyway, so the one night my mom wanted to make this recipe that she saw on TikTok, and she didn't have the right seasonings for it, so who did she tell to go to the store? Yours truly, me. And on Sundays, the mini market that was in our town would close at 4 o'clock. So I had to drive 30 minutes away to the nearest Target, and when I got there, I had to park in the back because they had 10 handicap spaces up front, another 10 for when you sit there and they bring your shit out to you, and another 5 whenever you're picking something up that you already ordered. But in all honesty, that didn't bother me because I had never heard about any girls getting trafficked at a grocery store. For part 2. Part 2 about why my sister is probably worse than yours. So like I said, my sister and I start school, I become friends with her friends, and she introduces me to this guy that she's been best friends with for a while. Him and I end up talking, I really like him, he really likes me, and my sister would always hype me up. She would be like, oh my god, you should get with him, such a nice guy, you guys would look so great together. So the one night he asked me if I wanted to go on a date with him, and of course I said yes, so I ran to my sister's room, I was so excited to tell her. So I knock on her door, I go in, and I'm like, oh my gosh, guess what? She's like, what? I'm like, he asked me out on a date, and she just sits there and stares at me. And when I ask her what's wrong, she's like, oh my god, you knew that I liked him, you're such a bad sister, I would have never done this to you. So then I started to feel bad, but then I didn't because I remembered how she used to hype me up. So the next day, a few hours before my date, she comes in my room. She's like, hey, I'm really sorry about how I acted yesterday. I would love to help you get ready for your date if you'll let me. I feel so bad. And we're sisters, so of course I get over it, and I tell her yes, I want her to help me, for part 3. Story time about how this boy stabbed me with a pencil in kindergarten. So a little background information, I was 6 years old and in kindergarten, obviously. I'm not gonna lie, this story kind of shows that it doesn't matter how old a child is, they can literally still be very mean and yeah. Well, during the middle of the school year, there was this new kid who came to our class and his name was Freddie. Now, Freddie coming in the middle of the year was kind of sad because everybody already had their friends. They didn't really want to talk to the new kid. And what made it even worse was the fact that he was a teacher's pet and he was the teacher's favorite. So he was always picked to go up to the board and be the line leader, which made the kids hate him even more. For example, during lunch, Freddie would go and try to sit with some of the kids and they would call the teacher over, say that he was doing something that was annoying them or really gross. And the teachers would remove him and put him at a table alone by himself. And I was one of the kids that didn't really make fun of him. I just kind of sat back and laughed, which I know is terrible. But like for part 2. Part 3 about how my best friend made my entire school hate me. So like I said, Ivy sent the pictures and everybody saw them. And I'm talking even the people in high school. The next day, Ivy and Layla are in the same science class together. And none of their friends were there that day, so they ended up working on a group assignment together. And just like that, they were best friends again. Well, I get thrown under the bus, the teachers come and pull me out of my class and they search my phone and they find the Instagram account on my phone. Then when I told them it was also on Layla's phone, they went on her phone and they didn't find anything, of course. I get suspended and Layla and Ivy tell everybody that I was the one who made the fake Snapchat account and the Instagram accounts. And the whole week that I was suspended, I was getting messages from a lot of people that I went to school with and people that I didn't even know from high school. I was getting tagged in stuff on Instagram of people saying how much of a weirdo I am. Well, a few days into my suspension, Layla and Ivy talked my boyfriend into breaking up with me. They faked text messages between each other and made it look like I was talking to another guy. And then they faked another conversation between Layla and I. Like for part 4. Storytime about how my best friend made my whole school hate me. So a little background information, I was 13 and in 8th grade, and so was my best friend who we are going to call Layla. And we met at a birthday party of a mutual friend during that summer. And all 3 of us started to hang out every day. And then when school started back up, the trio fell apart. Because our other friend Alice went to a different school, so she couldn't really hang out with us as much. When we first started school, there was this boy that I met and I really liked him and we started dating. But Layla and I had our own little friend group. There were 5 of us. Then there was this girl named Ivy. She had 4 people in her group, and our friend groups did not like each other at all. There was maybe one person from both groups that hung out with the other group, but that was it. And the only reason why none of us were friends was because the main girls, like the leaders of the group, used to be best friends. But then Ivy went behind Layla's back and started talking to this boy that Layla liked, and that's literally why they're not friends anymore. Well, all of us in the friend group were friends, but I was Layla's best friend. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with the girl best friend. So like I said, she would still hang all over him, and he pretty much told me, if you don't like that, then you can leave. Obviously, I did not want to leave because I liked him and he was my boyfriend. So I just kept putting up with it, and eventually, we got 6 months into our relationship. So at that point, I'm thinking maybe I have a little bit more authority, to be like, hey, I don't like the way that she acts around you. You guys can't hang out like that anymore. And they would hang out alone together. He would take her to dinner, which I literally tried telling him that the stuff that they do together is relationship stuff. And he was like, that's not true at all because we did all of this stuff before you and I even got together. So anyways, like I said, 6 months in, I'm like, hey, I don't like the way that you guys are hanging around each other. Once again, he gives me the same excuse. So he pretty much said that he didn't care. And the one night him and I were supposed to hang out, but he canceled on me last minute. And her and I didn't get along, and she never Snapchatted me before, but then I get a Snapchat of her and him making out at his house. Storytime about why my sister is probably worse than yours. So a little background information, my sister and I were both 16 and in our sophomore year of high school. And yes, my sister and I were twins, but we were the complete opposite. She was a girly girl and I was a tomboy. But the summer before our sophomore year, we both got grounded because we were driving my dad's car without our license and we wrecked it. So we ended up spending all summer together, which was very unusual because it was like her and I were acquaintances living in the same house. Well, over that summer, we got super close and she ended up turning me into a girly girl. She taught me how to take care of my skin, do my hair, do my makeup, and how to dress. Now, mind you, once we got into high school, she never spoke to me because I wasn't a part of the little clique that she was in. So she was like, yay, you can finally hang out with my friends and I'm super excited. So school starts, I end up becoming friends with all of her friends, and my sister's really good friends with this one boy. But she had always said that she never liked him like that. So she introduced us, him and I started talking, and we both ended up liking each other. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how this guy and his girlfriend literally beat me up. So like I said, him and I did the nasty at the football game, and then I go onto the bleachers with my friends, and she tells me that he has a girlfriend. But I'm not gonna lie, at this point, we had already been talking for 2 months, and I really didn't care because I liked him and I wasn't just gonna turn my feelings off. First of all, I do not owe that girl any loyalty. Number two, we were already intimate with each other, so I don't know what could make this situation worse than it already was. I mean, I did confront him about it, and he told me that he was gonna break up with her for me. So I believed him. I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna wait for him to break it off with her, and I'm still gonna talk to him. So eventually, he literally made me wait for like 2 more months. So what did I do? I told his girlfriend everything. I'm not gonna lie, it's not even that I wanted to be a good person. It was literally just to spite him. It's like, yeah, your man wants to be with me. He don't want you. This is the text messages of him telling me that he was gonna break up with you. That day, he called me and he was like, hey, do you wanna hang out? And I was shook that he did not bring up anything that I said to his girlfriend. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how I was almost kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, she asked me to help look for her daughter, and I was like, I'm gonna go tell a Target employee, and she was like, no, don't worry, they're all already looking, they have security all over the place. And she was like, will you help me check the parking lot because I don't know if she left. She was like, I've been having them look for the past 10 minutes. So I didn't think anything of this because I didn't think that some lady would try to kidnap me. So I went into the parking lot with her and I'm like, okay, where do you think she would have went? Like, did you drive here? Did she maybe go to the car? And she was like, no, we live like 5 minutes down the road. Do you think that we could get in your car and drive around? And I said, yeah, because I thought that it would speed up the process. And my dad's truck was really high off the ground. So while we're walking, I'm like, I think someone's under my car. And she was like, what? No, it's probably just the shadow. And I'm like, no, there's someone under my car. So I turn around to walk back into the store and she starts like pulling my arm towards my car. So an employee called the police whenever I went in there, and long story short, they were trying to kidnap me.